the world grows quiet. The light withdraws from the sky, and the body begins its slow surrender to rest. In the silence of night, something ancient stirs. The mind begins to loosen its grip on reason, and the walls between the seen and unseen start to fade. Here, in the quiet dark, another life awakens. The life of the dream. Every night, we drift into invisible landscapes that vanish by dawn. We meet people we've never met. Walk roads we've never seen. Feel emotions that seem larger than the world we know. And yet, when the morning comes, we call it nothing. Just a dream. But Carl Jung saw it differently. He believed that the dream is the bridge between two worlds. The conscious and the unconscious. The outer self and the hidden one. It is here, he said, where the soul finally speaks. In a language not of words, but of images, symbols, and feeling. Soft piano deepens, slow rhythm, heartbeat like pulse. When you dream, you are not escaping reality. You are returning to it. You are stepping into the deeper truth of who you are. The part that remembers what the waking mind forgets. Think of your consciousness as a candle flame in a vast, unending night. Around it stretches the unconscious, dark, infinite, and full of life. Every night, that flame flickers and sinks into the darkness. And in that descent, it sees what daylight hides. Your dreams are not random. They are the quiet messages of that darkness. Reaching out to you. Inviting you to remember yourself. Pause. The wind sound grows softer, like the hush before revelation. Jung once wrote, "The dream is a small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. A door that opens only when we let go. When we stop controlling. Stop pretending. Stop running from what we truly feel. Through that door, your forgotten emotions step forward. Your fears, your longings, your grief, your creativity. The voices you've silenced for too long. They speak to you through symbols, a child, a storm, a house, a shadow. They say what words cannot. And though they may confuse you, they are not your enemies. They are fragments of yourself, asking to come home. When you close your eyes tonight, and the noise of the world fades into stillness, remember this. You are not falling asleep. You are falling inward, into the vast ocean of your own mind, where truth and imagination meet. Dreams are the bridge. They carry you back to the source, to the part of you that knows who you truly are. And when you awaken, perhaps you'll realize that your dreams have been trying to awaken you all along. The world grows quiet. The light withdraws from the sky, and the body begins its slow surrender to rest. In the silence of night, something ancient stirs. The mind begins to loosen its grip on reason, and the walls between the seen and unseen start to fade. Here, in the quiet dark, another life awakens. The life of the dream. Every night, we drift into invisible landscapes that vanish by dawn. We meet people we've never met. Walk roads we've never seen. Feel emotions that seem larger than the world we know. And yet, when the morning comes, we call it nothing. Just a dream. But Carl Jung saw it differently. He believed that the dream is the bridge between two worlds. The conscious and the unconscious. The outer self and the hidden one. It is here, he said, where the soul finally speaks. In a language not of words, but of images, symbols, and feeling. When you dream, you are not escaping reality. You are returning to it. You are stepping into the deeper truth of who you are. The part that remembers what the waking mind forgets. Think of your consciousness as a candle flame in a vast, unending night. Around it stretches the unconscious, dark, infinite, and full of life. Every night, that flame flickers and sinks into the darkness. And in that descent, it sees what daylight hides. Your dreams are not random. They are the quiet messages of that darkness. Reaching out to you. Inviting you to remember yourself. Jung once wrote, "The dream is a small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. A door that opens only when we let go. When we stop controlling. Stop pretending. Stop running from what we truly feel. Through that door, your forgotten emotions step forward. Your fears, your longings, your grief, your creativity. The voices you've silenced for too long. They speak to you through symbols: a child, a storm, a house, a shadow. They say what words cannot. And though they may confuse you, they are not your enemies. They are fragments of yourself, asking to come home. When you close your eyes tonight, and the noise of the world fades into stillness, remember this: you are not falling asleep. You are falling inward, into the vast ocean of your own mind, where truth and imagination meet. Dreams are the bridge. They carry you back to the source, to the part of you that knows who you truly are. And when you awaken, perhaps you'll realize that your dreams have been trying to awaken you all along. Dreams speak a language older than words. It is the first language we ever knew, the language of the soul. Before there were alphabets, before we learned to name things, the human mind spoke in images. A river meant change. A mountain meant strength. The sun, rebirth. A serpent, transformation. In this ancient symbolic tongue, the unconscious still speaks to us. Each night, with patience, through the art of dreaming, Jung saw the dream not as a puzzle to decode, but as a living message. A personal myth, written by your own psyche. Dreams are the guiding words of the soul, he wrote. Why should I henceforth not love my dreams and not make their riddling images into objects of my daily consideration? To Jung, every dream was meaningful. Even the absurd ones. Even the ones that frighten us. Especially those. He believed the dream emerges from the same creative source that produces myths, art, and religion. That the unconscious mind is not chaotic, but deeply intelligent, constantly seeking to bring us back into balance. When our waking life drifts too far in one direction, the dream compensates. It corrects. It balances the inner world the way nature balances the outer. So when we become too rational, the dream may flood us with emotion. When we are consumed by ego, the dream might humble us, placing us back in the raw, uncertain terrain of the unknown. And when we have lost touch with wonder, the dream paints with colors no waking mind could imagine. To truly understand this, Jung said, we must not interpret our dreams as we interpret language. We must experience them. We must sit beside them as we would sit beside an old friend. Listening, not analyzing. Because dreams don't speak in definitions. They speak in symbols. And a symbol, Jung taught, is not a sign that points to something known. It is a bridge to something unknown. Something greater than the mind can grasp. Imagine this. You dream of a vast forest, dense and alive, and you are walking without a map. What does it mean? To a dictionary of symbols, it might mean mystery, or fear, or transformation. But to Jung, the meaning depends entirely on you. On what the forest evokes in your heart. Perhaps it reminds you of childhood, the freedom of exploration. Perhaps it fills you with dread, a symbol of being lost. Perhaps it feels sacred, the place where something is waiting to be found. The dream is not universal. It is personal, woven from the threads of your own inner story. Jung compared the psyche to a great orchestra. Each instrument, your emotions, thoughts, instincts, memories, plays its part. When they are in harmony, we experience peace. When one is ignored, the music falters. Dreams, he said, are the psyche's way of restoring harmony. A message from the conductor you forgot existed. So when you dream of falling, or of being chased, or of standing in front of a crowd unable to speak, don't ask what the dream means as if it were a test. Ask instead, what is my soul trying to tell me? The dream does not accuse you, it reveals you. It is the honest mirror of your inner state, showing you the places where you are divided, the parts of you that long to be seen. Jung once wrote that the dream is the little hidden door to the cosmic night. It opens onto a realm beyond space and time, where personal memory meets collective wisdom, where your individual story merges with the eternal. This, he called the collective unconscious. The dream, then, is not only your personal message. It is also humanity speaking through you. Your fears echo the fears of ancient ancestors. Your symbols carry the weight of thousands of years of myth. In the dream, the human soul remembers itself. And remembers that it was never alone. The language of dreams is subtle. It does not shout, it whispers. It will wait for you to listen. And when you finally do, you may discover that you have been conversing with something vast and loving. Something that has known you since before you were born. For the dream is not fantasy. It is communication. It is the inner world's way of saying, I am still here. You have not lost me. So tonight, when you drift into sleep, do not chase the dream. Let it come to you. Let it show you what you've forgotten. And remind you of what you still are. A story in motion. A bridge between worlds. A soul speaking in symbols, waiting for you to listen. Symbols. They are the language of the unconscious. But some of them, Jung discovered, belong not only to you, but to all of us. No matter where you are born, no matter what time or culture you come from, you dream of the same things. The same figures, the same shapes, the same mysterious presence that stands just beyond understanding. Jung called these ancient patterns archetypes. The invisible architecture of the human psyche. Archetypes are not images themselves. They are energies. Forces that move through us. Taking form in myth, religion, art, and dream. When you dream of a mother, you are not only dreaming of your mother. You are touching the mother archetype. The primal source of nurture and creation. The same energy that ancient people saw in the earth. In the moon. In the goddess who gives and takes life. When you dream of a wise old man, it is not merely a memory. It is the sage. The timeless figure who appears in every story to guide the hero. To whisper, you already know the way. When you dream of a shadowy figure, the one who follows you through corridors, the one you fear to face, it is your shadow archetype. The sum of everything you have repressed, denied, or hidden from yourself. It is not evil, Jung said, but simply unlived life. And when you dream of embarking on a journey, of crossing oceans, climbing mountains, entering forests, that is the hero archetype awakening in you. The instinct to grow, to transform, to face the unknown. Jung saw that archetypes are not myths we invent. They are myths we remember. They live beneath language, beneath culture, beneath identity itself. They are older than history, yet always alive in us, waiting to be recognized. He called this realm the collective unconscious. A vast ocean of shared human memory. A field of symbols that connects every soul. Your personal unconscious, Jung said, is like a wave rising from this ocean. It carries your individual experiences, but its water is drawn from the same deep source that nourishes all humanity. So when a symbol appears in your dream, it carries two meanings: the personal and the universal. Imagine you dream of a house. In the personal sense, it might represent your life, your mind, or your inner structure. But in the universal sense, the house is the symbol of the self. The totality of who you are. The visible and the hidden. The conscious and the unconscious. The rooms you know and the locked doors you never open. If you find yourself exploring its basement, you are descending into the depths of your unconscious. If you find yourself in its attic, you are touching memory, the faded relics of the past. And if the dream ends with you discovering a room you never knew existed, it is your soul expanding, revealing new possibilities for who you might become. To Jung, symbols were not decorations. They were bridges, living connections between your small, waking self and the vast totality of your being. When you hold a symbol in your awareness, not as an idea, but as a mystery to be lived, you allow the unconscious to participate in your growth. That is the work of individuation. To bring what is hidden into light. To unite the fragments of your inner world. Until you stand whole. Neither rejecting nor idolizing any part of yourself. Archetypes also guide the stories we tell. Every film, every legend, every religion carries them. They are not confined to books or temples. They move through our everyday lives. When a child looks up to a parent, the wise one lives in that gaze. When someone risks everything for love, the hero takes their hand. When you grieve, the mother holds you, even if you do not see her. And when you stand before your fear, the shadow rises to test your courage. You do not choose archetypes. They choose you. They call you to remember who you are. This is why Jung insisted. Symbols must be experienced, not dissected. When you dream of the sea, do not rush to define it. Let it wash over you. Ask how it feels. Does it frighten you? Does it calm you? Does it remind you that you are part of something endless? Because a symbol's power is not in what it means, but in what it awakens. Jung once said, "The symbol is alive only when it stirs the depths of our being. If it leaves you unmoved, it is dead. If it touches you, if it lingers in your thoughts like an echo, then it is a message from the soul. And in listening to these messages, you begin to see that life itself is symbolic. Every encounter, every joy, every wound, is part of an unfolding pattern, a personal myth that reveals itself slowly, through dream, reflection, and time. So tonight, when you dream of faces you've never met, or lands you've never seen, know this: you are walking the same paths that countless souls have walked before. You are not lost. You are remembering. For beneath every individual story, beneath every personal dream, there runs the ancient river of humanity. And through it, the timeless language of symbols continues to flow. There comes a moment in every inner journey when the light we seek begins to flicker, and instead of the heavens opening, we find ourselves standing before a door made of darkness. This is the realm of the shadow, the place within us that holds everything we refuse to see. To Jung, the shadow was not a villain. It was not evil. It was simply the truth we have hidden. Our jealousy, our anger, our weakness, our selfish desires, our shame, our fear, and even our secret strengths that never found a voice. We build our lives trying to escape it. We polish our image. We chase success. We strive to be good, to be loved, all while locking away what doesn't fit the story of who we believe we are. But the shadow never disappears. It waits. It hides in our reactions, in the people we criticize, in the emotions that suddenly overwhelm us. It appears in our dreams, as monsters, as strangers, as the dark figure that follows us down corridors we cannot name. Jung believed that no one becomes whole by chasing light alone. He said, "Enlightenment does not come from imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. To face the shadow is to meet the parts of yourself that you once exiled. It is to turn and ask, what have I denied in me? What have I judged, buried, or feared to feel? Imagine for a moment that your shadow is not your enemy, but a companion who has followed you through every storm, carrying the fragments you've thrown away. When you were told that anger is wrong, the shadow carried your anger. When you were told not to cry, it carried your tears. When you pretended to be strong, it held your vulnerability for you, until you were ready to return and claim it again. It is painful work, because to meet the shadow is to confront what you've spent a lifetime avoiding. The shadow humbles the ego. It tears down illusions. It forces us to see that we are not only light. We are also the storm, the hunger, the fear, the unspoken thought. Most people project their shadows outward. They see in others what they cannot see in themselves. They call it hatred, disgust, judgment. But projection, Jung warned, is a mirror. What you most condemn in another, is often what you secretly fear or repress within your own heart. To withdraw projection is to reclaim your power. To say, "This darkness is not the world's fault. It is mine to understand." Jung compared this to descending into a cave. At first, you see nothing. Then, slowly, your eyes adjust. Shapes begin to form. And what once looked terrifying becomes familiar, even sacred. Because the shadow, when faced, transforms. The anger becomes clarity. The fear becomes instinct. The jealousy becomes passion. Once you learn to hold it consciously, without shame, without denial. Think of all the great myths and stories. The hero must always journey into darkness. Orpheus descending into the underworld. Christ confronting Satan in the desert. The Buddha facing Mara under the Bodhi tree. Each story tells the same truth. That the treasure you seek is guarded by the dragon you fear to face. In Jungian language, that dragon is the shadow, and your task is not to slay it, but to understand it. To see that it is made of the same fire that gives you life. When you face your shadow, you begin to integrate. And integration is different from control. It means saying, "This too is me." The rage, the envy, the loneliness, the hunger to be seen, the child still longing for love. They are not mistakes. They are messages. The world often tells us to stay positive, to think light, to banish the dark thoughts. But this only deepens the split. Jung saw that healing requires balance. The courage to hold both sides at once. To walk with your shadow is to live honestly. It means you stop pretending. You stop running from the truth of who you are. And in doing so, you discover that what you feared was never darkness at all. It was power. The shadow is your unlived life. Your raw potential. The heat of your creativity and desire, waiting to be reclaimed and expressed. In the end, you cannot become whole without meeting the shadow. You cannot find peace without embracing your contradictions. And you cannot awaken without descending first into the night. Because the journey inward is not about perfection. It is about integration. The ability to hold your pain with tenderness, your flaws with compassion, and your mistakes with understanding. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And when you do, you realize that the darkness was never separate from the light. It was only its beginning. After the long descent into the shadow, after facing the dark mirror of your own being, there comes a silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of understanding. This is where the path of individuation begins." Carl Jung believed that the purpose of life is not to become good, nor successful, nor even happy, but to become whole. Individuation, he said, is the process of integrating all the parts of the psyche, the conscious and the unconscious, the light and the dark, the masculine and the feminine, the wounded and the wise, until they no longer fight for dominance, but begin to harmonize. It is not an easy journey, because to become whole is to accept that you are not one thing, you are many. And every part of you, even the broken ones, has its own voice, its own longing, its own truth. The ego resists this. It wants simplicity, control, certainty. It says, "This is who I am," and tries to silence what doesn't fit. But the soul whispers otherwise. It says, "You are more." And individuation is that slow awakening. When you begin to hear the whisper again. Think of a tree. Its branches reach toward the sun, but its roots dive into the dark. Both directions are necessary for growth. The light gives form, the darkness gives depth. And it is only when both are honored that the tree becomes stable, alive, complete. So too with the human psyche. If we live only in the branches, in ideals, roles, and appearances, we wither under the illusion of light. If we sink only into the roots, into the shadow, the pain, the unconscious. We drown in darkness. Individuation is the dance between the two. It is the balance of ascent and descent. A spiral that leads us inward and outward at once. Jung observed that this process often begins in midlife. When the masks we've worn start to crack. When ambition loses its meaning. When the outer world no longer satisfies the hunger within. He called it the night sea journey. A time when we are forced to face what lies beneath our achievements. Our identities. Our masks. For some, it comes as crisis. For others, as quiet discontent. But in both, the call is the same. To turn inward. And to discover the self. Not the ego's idea of self. But the deep, eternal center of being that Jung called the self with a capital S. The self is the unifying symbol of the psyche. It is not something we create. It is what has always been there. Watching, guiding, waiting for us to remember. Every dream that feels profound. Every synchronicity that stirs the soul. Every moment of quiet awe in nature. These are glimpses of the self speaking. It does not shout. It reveals itself in subtle patterns. In whispers that say, "You are not separate from life. You are part of the whole." Jung saw individuation as a sacred conversation. Between the ego and the self. At first, the ego resists. Afraid to lose control. But as it begins to listen, something changes. The ego learns humility. It stops demanding. And begins to serve a higher order. The unfolding of the soul. Individuation is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming real. It is the slow art of reconciliation. Making peace with your contradictions. Finding meaning in your suffering. And discovering that what once seemed broken was never truly separate from the whole. Jung often used mandalas. Those circular, symmetrical patterns found in every culture. As symbols of this wholeness. He noticed that patients who were healing would often draw circles unconsciously. As if the psyche itself was guiding them toward integration. The mandala to Jung was not just an image. It was an experience. A symbol of unity, balance, and eternity. Each point on the circle represents a part of ourselves. And the center, the self, is where they all meet in harmony. This is what it means to walk the path of individuation. To gather every fragment of who you are. The child you were. The roles you've played. The shadows you've faced. The dreams you've forgotten. And bring them together. Until the inner and outer worlds become one. The process has no fixed end. It is a lifelong unfolding. Sometimes it moves through stillness. Sometimes through struggle. But every moment, every challenge, every relationship, becomes part of the sacred work. To live this way is to see life itself as a teacher. To know that every loss, every confusion, every joy, every silence, is guiding you home. Not to something new, but to something ancient and familiar within you. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who the world expects. Not who your fears would allow. But the one who lives beneath all stories. The eternal witness behind your name. And when you begin to live from that center, something extraordinary happens. Life itself begins to align. The coincidences, the symbols, the right people, the right moments, all begin to move in rhythm with your inner world. Because the self does not seek control. It seeks connection. It does not strive to escape the world. It seeks to embrace it fully. With awareness, humility, and love. Individuation is the art of becoming whole. It is the sacred return to yourself. Not a perfect self, but an honest one, who can look into both the light and the dark, and say, "Yes, this is me." There are moments in life when the veil between the inner and outer world seems to lift. When something happens so strange, so perfectly timed, that it feels impossible to explain. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they call. You open a book at random, and the words on the page answer a question you hadn't yet spoken aloud. You feel a sudden shift, and realize the world is whispering back to you. Carl Jung called this mysterious phenomenon synchronicity. To him, synchronicity was not coincidence. It was meaning, emerging through the fabric of events. He defined it as a meaningful coincidence between an inner state and an outer event that are not connected by cause and effect, but by meaning itself. In other words, something happens outside you that mirrors something unfolding within you. The universe, for one fleeting moment, aligns with your inner world and speaks your language. To Jung, this was not fantasy. It was an expression of how deeply interwoven we are with the cosmos. How psyche and matter are not two separate realms, but two faces of the same mystery. He wrote, "The psyche and matter are two different aspects of one and the same thing." When we experience synchronicity, we are reminded that consciousness does not end at the borders of the mind. It extends through patterns, symbols, and timing that defy logic yet feel intimately personal. In Jung's life, synchronicity appeared often, especially during times of deep psychological transformation. One of his most famous examples came from a therapy session with a woman who was deeply resistant to reason. She dreamt of a golden scarab, an image of rebirth, renewal, transformation. As she recounted her dream, a soft tapping sound came from the window. Jung opened it, and a real beetle, a scarabaeid, flew into the room. He handed it to her and said, "Here is your scarab." In that instant, something broke open within her. Her rigid rationality melted, and she began to feel again. The outer world had mirrored the inner world, and meaning, not logic, was the bridge. To live with awareness of synchronicity is to live poetically, to see life not as random, but as conversation. It does not mean forcing meaning into every event, but sensing when something resonates, when the timing feels alive, when the world feels as if it is breathing with you. The more conscious we become, the more we begin to notice these patterns. Not because the universe suddenly changes, but because we do. Our perception opens, our intuition awakens. We begin to listen, not with the mind alone, but with the whole being. Synchronicity often appears when we are at a crossroads, when the old path has ended, and the new has not yet revealed itself. At such times, the rational mind falters. We ask for signs, for clarity, for guidance. And sometimes, if we are quiet enough to notice, they appear. A word from a stranger, a line from a song, a recurring image in a dream, a number that keeps showing up, as if the world were gently tapping you on the shoulder, saying, "Yes, you are seen." Jung saw these moments as glimpses into what he called the unus mundus, the one world, a realm beneath time and space, where everything is already connected, where psyche and matter, inner and outer, are one living organism. He believed that synchronicity is not rare. It is constant, but we only recognize it when the noise of thought begins to quiet. In silence, the pattern emerges. In stillness, meaning reveals itself. Jung's idea of synchronicity invites us to trust life, without needing to control it, to understand that the journey is guided not by certainty, but by resonance. Meaning becomes your compass. You begin to ask not, "Is this right?" but, "Does this feel aligned with my soul?" And slowly your decisions shift. You move less from fear, and more from intuition, less from logic, and more from harmony. Synchronicity is not proof. It is participation. It is the realization that you are not a spectator of the universe. You are part of its unfolding design. When the right book finds you, when a stranger's words echo your secret thought, when a sudden storm feels like the world crying with you, you are witnessing the language of the self. The dialogue between soul and cosmos. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Synchronicity is that reaction. But between the individual and existence itself. It reminds us that meaning is not man-made. It is discovered. In the quiet alignments. In the whispers that arrive just when you need them. In the sense that life itself is aware of your presence. In the end, synchronicity invites humility. It asks us to listen, to see the world not as a machine of random events, but as a living, breathing mirror of the unseen patterns within us. And when you begin to live this way, life no longer feels like something happening to you. It feels like something happening with you. The universe, Jung might say, is a mirror held up by the soul, and every coincidence is simply your reflection, smiling back. There is a still point within each of us, a quiet, unmoving center, around which the whole of life turns. Carl Jung called this the self. Not the self we usually mean, the me, defined by name, memory, or role, but something infinitely larger. The self, to Jung, is the totality of who we are. The conscious and the unconscious together. The seen and the unseen. The light and the shadow. Woven into one vast, living pattern. It is not the ego that says, "I am." It is the mystery that whispers, "You have always been." Throughout life, we are drawn toward this center, often without realizing it. We chase love, art, success, knowledge. But beneath every pursuit lies a deeper hunger. The longing to become whole. The process of individuation. The journey we have traced from the shadow to the soul is the gradual movement toward this center. Each dream, each symbol, each pain is a thread leading us home. Jung once said, "The self is our life's goal, for it is the completest expression of that fateful combination we call individuality." To approach the self is not to perfect the ego, but to dissolve its boundaries, to feel, perhaps for the first time, that the life within you and the life beyond you are not two things. The self does not belong to us. We belong to it. It is the deep intelligence that dreams through us, that arranges coincidences and awakenings, that calls us toward what we most fear and most need. When you listen inwardly, in stillness, in solitude, in pain, you begin to sense its voice. It does not speak in words, but in movements of energy, in intuitions that shimmer like distant stars. Sometimes it appears as a symbol, a circle, a mandala, a radiant center surrounded by chaos. In every culture, this image repeats, from Tibetan sand mandalas to stained glass rose windows, to the orbit of planets around a sun. The self is that same archetype, the unifying core, at the heart of existence. To live from the ego is to live in fragments. To live from the self is to live in alignment. To feel that every joy and sorrow has a place within the great design. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin to ask, "What is this showing me?" The self teaches through contrast, by leading us into shadow, so we might rediscover the light. It allows the breaking, so that a greater wholeness can emerge. Many who have glimpsed this inner center describe it as sacred, not in the sense of religion, but of reverence, a recognition that the divine is not somewhere else, but here, woven into the fibers of your being. Jung once wrote, "The self is not only the center but also the whole circumference, which embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the center of this totality. Just as the ego is the center of consciousness, to touch this truth is to experience an unexplainable peace, a calm that does not depend on outcomes, a love that does not need a name. The self does not promise an escape from suffering. It offers integration, a way to hold the opposites, life and death, joy and grief, light and darkness, in one vast embrace. you realize that the soul's growth is not a journey upward, but inward. The deeper you go, the more infinite it becomes. In Jung's later years, he often painted mandalas, circles filled with radiant colors and intricate symmetry. Each one, he said, was a reflection of the self, a map of the soul's unfolding order, emerging from chaos. He noticed that these images appeared spontaneously when he was in balance, and disappeared when he was not. They were mirrors, reminders that the center is always there, waiting, even when forgotten. To live in harmony with the self is to let go of control and trust the unfolding of your own nature. Just as the seed does not strive to become a tree, it simply follows its inner pattern. So too must we follow the quiet wisdom growing within us. Jung called this the realization of the inner God image. Not a belief, but an experience of oneness with something vast and eternal. When you come close to the self, you feel it not as knowledge, but as presence. The boundaries soften, the noise of the mind dissolves, and for a moment, the universe and your soul breathe as one. In that stillness, you understand what Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This is not a destination. It is a continual unfolding, the eternal movement toward your own center, where meaning, love, and mystery are one and the same. And so, the journey ends where it began. In stillness, the conscious and the unconscious united, the dreamer and the dream, the seeker and the found, the question and the answer, all one circle of becoming. The self is not reached. It is remembered. You were never apart from it. You were only asleep within its light. As the night deepens and the world falls silent, you begin to feel something shift inside. A quiet warmth, as if a small light has awakened within you. You've walked through shadow, through the unspoken corners of the soul. You've seen the hidden rooms, heard the language of dreams, and stood face to face with your own reflection. In the mirror of the unconscious, you are no longer the same. Carl Jung once said that enlightenment does not come from imagining figures of light, but from making the darkness conscious. And perhaps now, you understand what he meant. Every fear you faced, every wound you accepted, every silence you allowed to speak, has brought you closer to your own center. You do not need to chase meaning anymore. You are meaning, woven into the living fabric of existence.